Hey guys, I'm here with Daniel. Daniel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Daniel. Hope you're doing well.
So, as we kind of talked about, well, Daniel and I were talking before we started this live stream, but um, we wanted to kind of talk about how he got into typology. Would you like to share your story and, like, you know, whatever, really, whatever you want to talk about?
Sure. So with typology, one of the reasons why I wanted to do the interview was because I've seen this problem with typology. I will talk about how I got into it, but I've seen this problem with typology where the way people are introduced to typology is not good, right? Because people usually they go on that crappy 16 personality site, they take the test, and they don't see an archetype, they see a stereotype, right? So if you look at the descriptions, ENTJ, commander, INTP, logician, etc., right? ENTP, debater. And I mean, while some of these types can have those positive traits, a lot of the times what you see on those websites are stereotypes, not archetype. And so that's one of the issues I've seen with the MBTI community, especially when if we want to be taken seriously by the scientific community, right? This is one of the things that we need to fix. So the reason why I wanted to do this interview is because I really admire what you're doing, right? Because for people who are being introduced to MBTI, they can check out one of your videos and see a very realistic depiction of an INTP or an INFJ, whatever, right? So I thought that was really, that's really useful. That's really something useful, and I wanted to contribute to that. So yeah,
That's awesome. So, kind of talk us through your personal
yeah.
journey.
So I started about 2 years ago, and I saw the MBTI types on Quora, right? uh, Quora is a pretty useful site because you can ask a question and anyone can answer it, right? And I wasn't asking any MBTI questions, but I got that in my feed, and I was wondering, what is this, right? Maybe I can find it. Maybe it can be useful. And so I looked it up, right? And I found the crappy 16 personalities test, but I took it anyway. And I think I got INTP on it on the test. Okay. Um, but the thing is, with these tests, I didn't really care about my type all that much. It was more of a self-growth thing, right? I saw the theory and the personality types kind of as a tool for self-growth. And I mean, even to this day, I still think these archetypes can be applied in many things, like writing, right, and a variety of things. So that's really why I got into typology. um However, I kept getting these results of ENTP, INTP, right? But as I started learning the different archetypes, and when I would meet someone who I would identify as an INTP or an ENTP, right, and they kind of fit the caricature very well, um, I wouldn't really relate to them all that much. I really wouldn't relate to them all that much. So, um, that's been kind of a constant struggle, right? Because I'd be looking at the introverted thinking descriptions, I'd be looking at these descriptions, but on some regards I'd be relating to them, right? But on others I wouldn't. And again, it was always about a self-growth thing. So if I wasn't relating to some of the things, I didn't find it that useful,
Yeah.
right? So recently, I mean, recently, I've done this. I even wrote personality reports for people. People were interested in what I had to say, and so people wanted, hey, can you type me? Can you write a report on me? So I would actually write reports on people, and I would do like a functional analysis and all that fun stuff. But I actually, I wanted to contribute to this. I wanted to contribute to this community because, again, I see it's something that has a lot of value. So I actually went on talking with famous people, right? he did an interrogation video on me, right? And he said I was an INTP. That's the conclusion Eric came to. I did a Socionics diagnostic video with Jack. He was on your channel, the World Socionics Society, right? Interestingly enough, he typed me as an LIE, right, which is an ENTJ, which is the completely different functions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But seeing how I wasn't relating to a lot of the INTP and ENTP descriptions, even the cognitive functions, I think the type Jack said I was might actually be more accurate. So yeah.
I mean, this is kind of okay. So this is kind of, obviously we haven't really talked too much besides emails. And I don't like to just like say, oh, this is someone's type. I always question. To me, you definitely don't come across as an INTP, and you certainly don't come across as an ENTP to me. I was actually thinking in my head, these are the types that I actually had in my head, which are kind of different. But I also had ENTJ in my head, and also INFp actually, which is kind of, I know that's kind of off, like it's kind of weird to say like INFP, but there's just something about you that I have seen in male INFPs, and maybe like introverted feeling. I don't know what it is. So I'm not saying that you're not an ENTJ.
Yeah.
But I also, ENTJ and INFP were the two that like really came to mind when we started talking. Definitely, I don't think you're an extroverted feeler. And that's like neither here nor there, but like just by the way you talk, and just even the way you look, not like physically, it's kind of hard to describe. But that's really interesting. I love what you're trying to do for this community.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, the thing about it was that, Jack, he actually said I had very good extroverted intuition, right? When he was typing, he said I had high extroverted intuition, right? And the thing about my extroverted intuition is and even Eric as well, he said I was an INTP, so they use NE, right? But the thing about my NE is I use NE to kind of fit my pragmatic goals, right? I don't use it just for the sake of using it. Whenever I talk to ENTPs, INTPs, NE, that's their life, and they like using it because that's them, right? That's why they like NE, right? That's just what they are. They like analyzing an idea for the sake of analyzing an idea, right? And as well, it was because of that I didn't think I used TI either, because I'm not that way, actually. If I analyze something, I will try to find some use for it. And even with this, right, I always tried to find a use for it. With this, I actually, oh, wow.
Give me While you're doing that, I'm gonna plug in my laptop because I realized.
Yeah, no. My brother, we got this thing where we can change the color of the lights in my room, and I think my brother's messing with it right now.
Oh, like, wow, that's funny.
This Here, blue light, yeah.
Let me go get the charger. I don't know where I put it, so I'm gonna go look for it.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
But as I'm looking for it, I think it's in this room. Just
okay.
Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, no. So the thing about my type was, like, is, I'm making. Hey, I'm making a video right now.
Making a video?
Yeah.
Can I be in your video?
Maybe later, man. Maybe later.
All right.
Yeah.
Be a fat guy.
Okay. Sorry, my brother came in.
That's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the thing about my type was I never really, cared to know my type just for the sake of knowing it. I wanted to do something with the type, right? For me, it was self growth, right? But like I was saying, even with the cognitive functions, right? There was an essay I wrote, and the whole story, it was a conflict between an ISTJ and an ENFP, right? And I used how, the whole story was about like the clash of the NESI axis, right? And I also used it in a philosophy essay where I was talking about how Plato, he was definitely an NI user, right? NI with TI as well. And it was an essay on Plato versus Aristotle. So I talked about how Aristotle actually valued TE and how that made him an empiricist and so forth.
Wasn't Aristotle ISTJ?
Interesting.
Or
I'm not really sure.
I forget who it was. Maybe it wasn't. No, never mind. I'm thinking of a completely. I'm not even
Oh,
thinking
okay.
of Aristotle.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And even with Aristotle, I didn't focus on the perceiving axis too much. I just focused on TE. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, the thing about one of the things I wanted to talk about was, again, back to stereotypes. I think one of the main issues with this community is that the stereotypes, right? And the problem is, again, the way people are introduced. So people go to that 16 personalities, website, they look at the types and they see these stereotypes. And the thing about it is once a person learns something, it's very hard for them to learn it in a different way, right? It's very hard. People don't like to change their viewpoints, right? People can become very stubborn, right? And so with these kinds of interviews, you're giving them a more realistic depiction. And so the way they're introduced to it is actually a better introduction. But the main thing we all have to strive to do is we have to strive to detach from these stereotypes, right? And because again, even me, if I'm an ENTJ, right? ENTJs have this depiction of being, bureaucratic, a commander, and that's not really me, right? And INFPs, they're described as, fairies or something, and that's also not, me, right?
Yeah.
So we really, if there's one thing we need to do is just detach from these stereotypes, right? Because that's how we're going to be able to deepen our understanding and also transcend our own types. So yeah.
That's actually interesting. Well, I mean, I've talked about like stereotypes and stuff like that. I'm actually one of the videos I'm planning for 2019 is I'm going to do a really exaggerated version of all of the types, like a stereotype for all of the types, and like make it really exaggerated.
Yeah.
Because I hate that. Like it's so stupid. But I get it. Like what you just said about when people get introduced to MBTI, they go to 16personalities.com, or maybe they go to like the forums where people are just literally like shooting in the dark with darts and stuff, like, oh, I think this person's this type. It's like, and they don't really have a reason behind it. They're just like, oh, I knew an ISTP once, so this person's an ISTP. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's dangerous. It's very dangerous because again, one of the goals is for the scientific community to value us, right? At least for me, right? And Dave Superpowers is doing a really good job of that. But these stereotypes, it's just, they're not doing us any favors. It's actually again, this whole thing about people not being able to detach from what they've already learned. It's the same thing with gender, right? With gender norms, guys are supposed to be, aggressive and strong, and girls are supposed to be emotional, whatever, right? And again, it's the same issue. It's the exact same issue, right? And it doesn't do us any favors, and it actually inhibits us from, progressing as a society. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the things, I don't know if you want to jump to this yet, but one of the things I found interesting in the email that you sent me originally, you were talking about C.S. Joseph and compatibility. Would you like to kind of talk
Sure.
about that a little bit?
Sure. So I've had this idea for a while for dating, right? So people for MBTI, right, and Socionics, one of the things, they say, hey, date your dual, right? Dating your dual, it's going to be so amazing, blah blah blah. There's going to be, so much growth, right? Well, C.S. Joseph, he actually has his theory of cognitive synchronicity, and the main idea behind the theory is that you have introverted functions, and introverted functions are a source for the extroverted function, right? So TI is a source for TE, okay? NI is a source for NE, SI a source for SE, etc., right? And the theory, it kind of does make sense in some regards. For example, right? An FI and an FE user, right? FI users, it's kind of about what they want, and the FE user is about pleasing others, and so the dynamic actually could work very well, right? Um, Same with TI and TE in a sense, because TI, again, the logic is just so deep, it's so precise, right? And usually for TE users, when they want to accomplish something or want to make a system work, they actually need that very precise, deep understanding of things, which the TI user gives them. So, I was thinking for dating, right? Kind of a combination of this, right? So duality, I think it's very valuable, right? But I think the reason why duality is so valuable is it's not necessarily so much the middle functions, but the first one and the last one, right? So, you're a dominant NI user, right? And so you're seeking SE, right? And so duality would say you should date an ESTP. However, I would actually argue semi-duality could be better. So an ESFP. Why is that? Well, again, duality, the top and inferior function, right? You're getting that from the ESFP. However, the idea of cognitive synchronicity with the ESFP also comes into play because, again, they're FI users, you're an FE user. And, according to the cognitive synchronicity, that would work very well, right? And so I think it's an idea people have to consider as
Yeah.
well. So
I think that's very interesting, and I think there's a lot there's a lot of factors involved, and it's very interesting. It's very confusing for people that don't know. Like some people watching this don't really know about duality and like duals and quasi duals and stuff like that. But I noticed with so I dated an ESFP. Um, we dated when I was 20, and out of everybody that I dated, I would say that he was probably like our relationship, even though like if you met both of us separately, you would never put us together because we're so different, seemingly. I felt more comfortable with him than anybody else. Like he was the most respectful guy that I've ever dated, like very considerate, didn't ever pressure me to do anything. Like the whole time we dated, I think we like kissed. That was all we did, and like it's it's crazy. So I would say that um, that's probably that has a lot of truth to it. And I'm blushing right now. So, but yeah. Have you
yeah.
ever do you believe that you're an ENTP? I mean an ENTJ?
Um, with the analysis that Jack gave me, one of the main things he focused on was pragmatism, right? And how the ENTJ is a very pragmatic person. And I do relate to that to an extent, right? So it's a possibility. Who knows? Again, I don't really care too much about knowing my type. It's more about how I can, how I can make that useful. But it's certainly a possibility. And Jack is a very insightful guy. So it could be, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, even though like I guess a lot of people uh I mean, I have my INFJ title on this channel or whatever.
Sure.
At the end of the day, I could really give a shit if I was an INFJ or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason why it's important to me too is, I mean, in a different way, but I personally, I use it for personal growth as well. And you know, I've always questioned like what my type was, and now I feel more secure about it. But if I was really proven that I'm not that type and I really had like a revelation, you know, things would probably, I would probably have to reevaluate a lot. But at the end of the day, I would be relieved if I was mistaken of my type and then I found out that I was actually a different type. So, but
Yeah.
um
Is there a type you're leaning more towards?
then INFJ.
No, for me.
Oh, for you. Um, I mean, I think I would lean towards ENTJ. The only two that I really am leaning towards in general, which sounds really weird, like because of the stereotype with INFPs, but I'm talking specifically about INFP males, and not every single INFP male is like that, but there's something about you that kind of strikes me in that way. And obviously, you're not a stereotypical INFP if you are.
Sure. Sure.
But I would say more towards ENTJ, but there was this slight indication maybe INFP as well. I
Yeah.
definitely, again, would not say you're an INTP or an ENTP.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can both agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In regards to a struggle I've always had, and it's something I have tried to improve, you know, and again, MBTI has been a helpful tool, but something I've always struggled with is actually self-love, right? I can be very critical of myself at times. In high school, I would always kind of be the one organizing projects in a sense, right? I would always be the one organizing projects. And there was one time where I was, it was this group project. It was all in a Google Doc. And so, the Google Doc was all scatterbrained, right? And so I was kind of the one organizing it, right? And I was up till like 1 or 2 a.m. organizing that entire thing, right? And then this guy in who was in my group, who I actually think is an INFP, right? He was actually telling me, hey, it's okay. It's okay, man. Take a break. It's okay to it's okay if we don't get it all done. Just be okay with that. And that is something I have somewhat struggled with. So it has been, MBTI has been helpful in that, at least, in helping me realize that, because one of the things about me is sometimes I will put myself in uncomfortable situations just because I see a lot of value in that, right? So I'm actually from Texas, but I decided to go to college in New York because in that environment, I didn't think I would be that comfortable, right? And I saw it. I saw a lot of potential there in me going and all the opportunities present there. So that's why I decided to go, right? So with that being said, that's something I've always struggled with. I try to make myself, weirdly enough, right? Because most people wouldn't do this, but I try to make myself uncomfortable actually, and I try to, even in swimming, right? I was in swimming, and I wouldn't like it all that much. I actually didn't like swimming all that much, right? But um, there would even be times where I would have to leave mid practice, go to the restroom, and throw up, but I would come back. I would still come back because I knew, there was a lot of stuff I could learn from that. And so that's why I stayed in it.
So would you say, I mean, this is kind of a leading question, but would you say that you value the process or the result more?
And probably the result. The process is nice and it should be focused on, but the result is what I value more.
Yeah. Sorry. So we got a question.
Sure.
Shaheem asked, Daniel, how long have you known about MBTI? And I think you already said that. You said
2 years.
yeah. It's interesting with MBTI. I've noticed that a lot of people I've talked to, I mean, 2 years is a significant amount of time, but there's been a lot of people that have into it in the last year or so. And it's crazy how much you can learn if you really put yourself into it. And I mean, you can be ignorant with it. I know people that have known about MBTI for a decade or maybe less than that, but they just take the test and they look at this website 16personalities.com and oh, that's my type, going back to the stereotypes. And yeah, it's not really doing people justice to do that. So it's interesting that you are very knowledgeable for only being into it for 2 years. So going back to some of the questions that you asked earlier, what would you like to talk about as far as like the topics we were talking about in your first email? I know you're talking about how INFJs rationalize their feelings. Are there any other types that you have like an analysis about how they rationalize things, or
maybe that's just a common theme I've seen in TI users, right? And it's working with FE as well. And so with TI, well, the thing about FE is FE users, they don't want to feel special in a sense. They don't feel special, right? If it seems like they're feeling special, they actually, from what I've seen, they try not to feel all that special. They just try to say, no, I'm just like everyone else, blah, 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 right? And so whenever I've seen, whenever there's something bad that happens to them, right? Or something that, they don't like, they're just like, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. That's usually I've seen. They kind of rationalize the feeling. Should I even be feeling that, that, I don't know. That's just the common trend I've seen with TI users.
As opposed to extroverted thinkers?
As opposed to like FI or something.
What would you say? How would you say that FI users are different?
Again, the whole rationalizing of feelings is something I don't see with FI. With FI, they just seem to take in the feeling, process it, right? And they don't, it's almost like TI users are critiquing the feeling, especially the dominant ones, right? And that's also, in a sense, how they repress feeling, right? But with FI users, that doesn't seem to be the case. They'll take in the feeling, process it through, their emotional process. And, that's usually why I don't see FI users lash out all that much, right? They kind of do take the time to, because one of the stereotypes is that INTPs or, people with inferior FE, they don't think about their feelings at all. So like they'll lash out at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with FI users, again, maybe because they don't rationalize the feelings, not entirely sure, but maybe that's why, they're usually very peaceful people. That's what I've seen from FI. So.
And I think that also has, I think there's definitely a difference like between an FI user that has any SI versus NISE. I think
Sure.
that can look a little, I think actually ISFPs do lash out.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say I don't know about that. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I
it's not fully refined.
Think about it. I would say I don't really see INFPs do that as much. But I have seen ENFPs and ISFPs specifically lash out. And I've also seen INTPs lash out. Like, I'm not saying that this is necessarily like it could be on a case by case basis, but in situations I've seen a theme with certain people. I know for myself, I'm pretty level headed, but in situations, if I'm pushed to, for me, the way I get like upset about something is if I see it as like a candle wax thread, and like someone's burning the candle and they keep on burning it, and maybe it will um, the light will go out, but it's still, there's a certain amount left. And then once it's there, it's like I can appear to be very calm and be okay with certain things. And then once it's there, or like something abrupt really happens, it would have to be a super abrupt thing, like super out of character thing that someone did that was horrible or something, then I could see that going faster. But typically it's like very slow and then it will blow up. I don't know.
I see. Yeah. Um, yeah. What I also wanted to talk about was personality, right? You know, this whole thing. This is also a problem I see with this MBTI and just cognitive functions. Again, it says cognitive functions, but is this more of a personality thing or more of a like a thing of neuroscience? You know, because it's just, you know, the thing with personality, right, is some people type personality to behaviors, and that can be very dangerous, right? Because again, it's the stereotype. So people associate very aggressive behaviors with an ESTP when an ESTP might actually not be that way, right? So, you know, but the thing with what Dave's superpowers is doing, right, is something I like because again, it's not necessarily one behavior, but I mean, how he's tracking type, it's a trend in the person's actions, right? It's almost a trend. It's like a pattern that they consistently keep doing, not just one specific behavior. I'm not really sure if that's fully it, but um, the thing about this personality thing is I'm not, you know, because there's the whole voltology thing, right? There's a whole voltology thing about, you know, if you move your eyes like this, you know, or smile, you have a wide smile, you're an FE user. You know, I'm not really sure about. I'm not fully sure about that, and it's because if it's a neuroscience thing, if it's actually really, you know, fully cognitive processes, then that would make sense, right? I could see that. But if it's simply a personality thing, I don't see a link between personality and the eye movements or the smile or whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, yeah, that is a frustrating thing, because, and that's why I feel like things like MBTI and Socionics and other typology mechanisms, um, they aren't seen as real science, because there is that kind of, is it a personality thing or is it actually a cognitive thing? I personally think it's a cognitive thing. I think that you can see certain things. I mean, it can be harder to see, especially if someone had like plastic surgery or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're speaking like if we just look at a natural human being that has a certain personality type. Um, but anyways, with the cognitive functions, I think people, what you said about the behavior thing, that is volatile to learning MBTI or any typology system. When you look at behavioral things, that is not going to serve you, because you're going to, that's going to go back to the stereotypes, and you don't know how that person grew up. You don't know what they're exposed to, because someone, if you had the same person, if you did an experiment, they had the same cognitive makeup, whatever it was, same brain, um, and you just had them in two dimensions. One dimension where they were abused and mistreated, and then another dimension where they were nourished and encouraged. They're going to look different. They're going to look different. And I think it's really unfortunate. And that's why I do think it is more difficult sometimes to type people that maybe have severe mental illnesses. But I do believe it's cognitive, and I wish that that was more of a recognized thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it should be a cognitive thing as well, because again, they're called cognitive functions, right? So it really should be a cognitive thing. Now, Jung's work definitely wasn't very empirical, right? And so the goal is to make it more empirical. That's the goal, just to apply like a scientific method to it, right? Because what you said is very true, and it also raises the question. Because again, if it's really a cognitive thing, then this would be considered nature. But if it's a personality thing, it could actually be more considered nurture, right? So it also kind of raises that question, because if it's purely based on cognition, it's nature, it's your own inner nature, right? But the behaviors part, that's not really that's more kind of nurture. I don't know if that
No, that
kind
makes
of,
total
yeah.
sense. And that's the thing. They confuse nurture for nature, or vice versa. But really, you should be looking at nature. That's why I always ask the question, how were you like when you were a child? Or basically kind of walking through your life. Because I think when you were, or anybody was a small child, when you weren't corrupted by, and maybe you were, like, unfortunately, there are people that maybe are molested or something horrible to them at a very young age, or maybe they were just born with some type of severe illness or disease or disability that inhibited them in some way. But anyways, it's nature. It's not nurture. What these should be is, you should look at it as, this is the personality that you were born with, and you may appear differently. And that's the thing, because in these descriptions they don't talk about how people can change. And for example, my sister, I believe she's an ISTJ. I could be wrong about that. I definitely think she's an introverted feeler. People have said, oh, she seems like an INFp. I don't think she's an INFp. She's not intuitive. And I don't mean this like in a mean way, but I've talked to her about things and she does not really have intuitive thoughts. I thought she was an intuitive when I first, like growing up, just because when I first got into MBTI, I thought I had a misconception about sensors. So I just assumed she was an intuitive. But anyways, either way, she hasn't always been so feeling or whatever. It took her a long time. For example, my sister, when she was younger, she didn't find animals to be cute. I mean, I know that's not just like, that's kind of not necessarily a personality thing, but she didn't see animals as cute. She didn't have like personal connections. She didn't regard me as a sister until high school. So it's like, like, it's not, what you see her now is actually a pretty developed version of herself. And I'm not saying that she was bad before or something, but that's the thing about personality. A lot of what we see is behavior, but that's not really what your true personality is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. At the same time, especially with what Dave Superpowers is doing, do you think personality is something that can be measurable?
I'm subscribed to Dave Superpowers, but I actually don't really watch his videos.
Okay.
So I'm not extremely familiar with him. I don't watch C.S. Joseph. I still haven't watched any of his videos. And Dave Superpowers, I don't watch his videos. But I mean, it's not that I don't.
Sure.
I just don't personally agree with everything he's doing, his system. I think it's kind of confusing for a lot of people. But I think he actually has a lot of value, and I actually do respect him. But I don't watch his videos.
I see. Yeah.
So, but
that's
what were you gonna say?
No. I mean, that was it, really. That was the question. Which, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to answer just because you don't have much knowledge on him. So it wouldn't be fair to you.
From what I do know, again, yeah, I don't have very much knowledge on it. But from what I have seen of him or heard from him, because I have seen his videos, like some of them a lot, like a while ago, and I see like his videos in my description box. I mean, in my subscription box. But from what I know, he has a typing system where he groups, he does like the certain personalities, and then he has like a number associated with those personalities. And also, he has little subgroups where those people look similar to one another. So, would you kind of like to describe what he?
So the thing about his system is there's not really 16 types. There's 512 types. Okay. So there's all these different combinations, right? There's, for example, there's the animals combination. So you can be leap first or blast or consume. And it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff to explain. But basically, he says that the Myers-Briggs 16 personality types are in the middle of his spectrum. They're like the middle of his spectrum, right? And then there's all these other types, right? That, many different subtypes of each of the 16 types. And he also talks about how people can value their first and third function, right? Instead of their first and second function. So there can be INFPs, which are FISI, and some are FINE. So that's also, it's a pretty interesting, it's kind of an interesting discovery. I mean, again, it goes against a lot of, Jungian theory, but it is kind of cool. So
That's interesting. I mean, he may actually, I mean, he could be onto something, and I definitely think what he's doing is, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily taking away. I think it is kind of confusing for like getting back to the core of things, but I think it is helpful for people. The thing is about that, it makes me think that, is he deriving, and maybe you know this or not, and I don't know. I know he has his classes, but is he deriving this from nurture, like putting nature with nurture, or what do you think?
I'm not
Or
really
is he
sure.
doing it basically, I mean, from the cognitive functions? He's saying that cognitively, or is he saying
Yeah,
that the nurture aspect makes the cognitive functions have a different order, not a different order, but like a different
yeah,
value?
yeah. To be frank, I'm not really sure, and that is a really good question. But I don't think I don't think I don't want to talk out of my ass. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it would be
yeah.
really interesting to speak with him.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, definitely. I also thought you should speak with Megan. That would be pretty awesome. Yeah, you and Megan.
Megan Lavoda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're friends. We're friends on Facebook, and we follow each other on Instagram and stuff like that. She, we've been talking for a while. She's been busy. I know she's doing other things. She's in grad school and stuff. I know she had finals and stuff. So we're gonna probably do, I don't, at least one video in the beginning of 2019 for sure. So yeah, no,
Cool.
I'm looking forward to that. I think she's very insightful and it's very
Yeah,
interesting. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's a lot of stuff she's brought up that's very valuable to,
yeah.
self growth, MBTI. So yeah.
Yeah. So blank piece of paper said, um, can an animal be typed, guys?
Can an animal be typed? Like, is he referring to the Dave Superpowers animals, or
I
you
don't
know?
think so. I think or
Okay.
he or she is talking
Ah, I see. I see.
like,
So can a dog be typed as an INTJ or etc.? I see. Hmm. Not really sure actually.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's hard to say.
yeah. That's just kind of a, that's just kind of a fun thing to do, right? Typing animals. It's kind of a fun thing to do. Like, you said you've typed your cat, or I think your
Yeah,
cat or something. I'm not sure.
I mean, I personally think, okay, I think you can, but I mean, if you think typing humans is challenging, I mean, in some ways it can be easier to type animals, but I mean, I say easier in a very vague.
Are you typing them off? Are you typing them off like the archetypes? Is that how you're typing it? I mean, because you obviously can't use like, cognitive functions all that much when it comes to animals. So.
Yeah, you can't, but I'm not really typing it off of the archetype. I mean, I personally, and I think I'm a crazy person. Like, I probably should have a tinfoil hat or something, but but I feel like I can see cognitive functions in animals, but I might be wrong. And I'm not saying like, I mean, specifically cats and dogs, because that's what I have the most experience with. I mean, I've had cats and dogs my whole life. The only two that I'm more certain about, like, which sounds okay. First of all, guys, do not think, this is strictly like, this is where we get into the pseudoscience aspect.
Yeah.
I'm not saying type your animals and that's going to be accurate. But like, I personally do think that Pumpkin is an ENFJ, and I do think that Henry's probably an ESFP. I don't know what Fleur is. But yeah, I think, I mean, I personally can see, I feel like I can see cognitive functions in all of them, but again, I could be very wrong.
I see. So. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. Wait, how long have you been into this? 5 years?
No. I've been into this for like 9 years.
Oh, wow, 9 years. Wow.
Yeah. Well, not like extremely. So I would say more, okay, so there's like phases with, I mean, I can see definite phases of how I got into MBTI. I've talked about this before, but I was originally, I'm pretty sure I was 16. I might have been 17, but I'm pretty sure I was 16. I got into MBTI, and then I was the same way as a lot of people, where you get your personality type, you read the description, and it's like, it wasn't 16personalities.com, but I read the description and I was like, oh, this does sound like me, but I'm not gonna look at it too much. And I got ENFJ, and I would take it on and off. Like when I got into college, like I would take the 16 personalities one and I would get ENFJ pretty much all the time. And then when I think in my junior year of college, I started like getting into it more because more people were around me were into it. So they were like, oh, what's your type and stuff? And we were like talking about it and I got really deep into it. And this was when I was thinking that I was an ENFJ, and I didn't even like think about INFJ. Like I wasn't like, oh, I'm an INFJ. Like I wasn't like trying to be this special snowflake or something. But it wasn't until the end of that year that my friend Valerie, who's an ENTP, she was like, Emily, I don't think you're an ENFJ. And then I went on this like long journey learning the cognitive functions and studying all of the types. I didn't just go into it thinking, oh, I'm an INFJ. I must prove that I'm an INFJ. It was, I'm going to look at all of the types and see the cognitive functions and see which one works and which ones don't. So
yeah,
that's what I did.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I actually started when I was 16 as well. So yeah,
you're just a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but again, there's, it's fun to use as times. I mean, you like typing your dogs. I personally love typing TV characters or movie characters. I love doing that. That's something I can't stop thinking about that. Whenever I go watch a movie or a television show, I'm automatically trying to type them. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do that too. I think basically I try not to do it all the time. I used to be really bad about this, but even when I would first meet people, it's like, I mean, I kind of do this still, like where I'm constantly like in the back of my mind or sometimes in the forefront of my mind,
Yeah.
cognitively assessing someone as I'm talking to them. And it's kind of become like this pesky habit. But yeah, no, that's interesting. Um, this is a very random question, like very off topic, but when do you get your braces off?
This is actually a retainer I wear at
Oh, it's a
night.
retainer.
Yeah.
Oh, how long did you have braces?
For a long time. Let's see. My crap memory. I think I had them for like 7 years.
Oh my God,
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, 7 years. Yeah, 7 years.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no, terrible teeth.
Wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Nah, it's okay. I mean, I think I have to wear this for the rest of my, I mean, I can take it off during the day. I have to wear it at night though. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
yeah.
was supposed to have my retainer, like I was supposed to wear my retainer at night for the rest of my life, but I lost mine. So, I mean,
Yeah, no.
my top teeth aren't bad, but
Yeah, no, they're
my
not.
bottom tooth is kind of crooked.
Yeah.
I haven't worn my retainer since
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow.
No, I had braces for 2.5 years, and I loved braces. Like I actually secretly want braces again. So
Why is that?
I just loved the feeling on my teeth. Like I liked the
Ah,
tightness. Like I miss braces. So I
wow,
notice when
wow.
people have a retainer or braces, and I always like to ask that question.
I see. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll stop wearing it one day.
No,
Yeah.
don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. No, oh yeah, that's actually one of the reasons why I thought, maybe that's why I was getting those INFp and ENFP results, because my SI isn't all that good. Like I struggle to take care of myself at times. Like my internal needs, like I'll overwork myself sometimes, right? And I forget to recognize that I need rest, right? Even in high school, I had this weird pattern where I would go to sleep at 9 and wake up at 1 in the morning to do homework. And so from 1 in the morning to 3, right, 3:30, I'd be doing homework, and then I'd go back to sleep, and then I'd sleep for an hour, and I'd go back to doing homework and again. And the reason
What
why,
the
yeah,
heck?
yeah, no, and the reason why I did that was because I would come home from swim meets exhausted. I would come home exhausted, and even if I tried to do homework and work, I couldn't do it. And so I thought, hey, what if I try this out? What if I go to sleep right now, wake up at 1 a.m. and do my homework, right? But the thing about that was it was always meant to be a short-term solution, but it turned into a long-term solution. And then and then eventually I realized, what am I doing? This isn't useful. Why do I keep doing this? So yeah,
It is funny how we can get into
yeah,
certain habits. And I think that's actually another dimension that we can add to this whole personality thing is again, like if we look at the personality, like your true personality as your nature, as your cognitive like makeup, you have that over here. There's going to be behavior. I would say behavior is a little bit stronger than habits.
sure,
But habits are a huge factor in how you are perceived. So, for example, a stereotypical INFP would not be a clean person. That's like their
sure,
stereotype is like
sure,
that INFPs are extremely messy. But if you met someone that maybe in their life, their parents told them, hey, you need to make your bed every day and you have to have your
yeah,
room spotless or you're
yeah,
going to get in trouble.
yeah,
They're going to be clean. And maybe they'll rebel, but like habits are, it's interesting. It really is interesting.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So going back to MBTI and everything like that, um, what else would you like to see in the future in the MBTI community and the Socionics community?
Well, definitely one thing is I'd like to stop seeing discrimination towards sensors. It's funny, it's really ironic because a lot of intuitives think intuitives are better than sensors, when I could argue it's the complete opposite, if anything, right? Because if we didn't have sensors, if we didn't have SI users, strong SE users, the world would probably go to shit. It probably would. It would be a complete disaster, right? And in some regards, they're more valuable than actual intuitives. And so I'd really like to stop seeing a discrimination towards sensors, really.
That, I mean, I've talked about this so many times, and I've talked about this video idea a few times as well, but like I'm gonna make a video again, like it's gonna be kind of clickbaity, but it's gonna be called S is for stupid.
Yeah.
Because that is literally what people think when they first, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people think that when they first get into MBTI, not in Socionics. Socionics doesn't really have that stereotype, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I love Socionics.
Yeah.
But specifically MBTI, people that are sensors are stupid. And that's like, it's so incorrect. And I personally don't think, I mean, I think I agree with you as far as the physical world and basically infrastructures and everything. If we didn't have sensors, the world would go to shit in many ways. But I also don't think that if you're a sensor, you're automatically smart or stupid. And if you're an intuitive, that you're automatically smart or stupid.
Correct. Yeah.
It's an individual basis. But yeah, no, that is that is an awesome thing to want to change, because I want the same thing. What are some other things that you want?
In addition to that, I'd really like to stop people linking IQ to types. There's no link. There is no link between IQ and the personality type. At least I don't see it, right? So that's something I'd like to stop. Again, I'd like to see, I'd like to continue to see what Dave Superpowers is doing. It might not be completely right, but I think it's very effective, right? And it's very effective in proving, that this has a lot of value. The whole thing has a lot of value. Again, it can be applied in many things, really. So those are some of the other things.
Yeah, no, and that makes me want to, I mean, if I was to interview Dave Superpowers, which maybe that should be a 2019 goal.
Yeah.
I would definitely want to look at his videos and maybe even look at his class. Yeah, I think people like him are being helpful, no matter, maybe it's not completely correct, but yeah, it is interesting. What would you personally want to do to kind of aid with some of those things, or maybe even other things in combating certain issues?
Well, I mean, to be frank, I'm not really sure. I guess, it's not just me, it's, just people as a whole. Personally, with me, I'm not sure if this is combating the issues, but I have like an AI idea for, the types, right? So, if people wanted to make the AI from like Westworld, for example, right? These archetypes could be very useful in that, right? Because these archetypes, they feel very human. And so that's an idea that it's somewhat of an ambition, right? And personally, I looked up the idea online, right? Having like 16 different types of AI, right? And each would represent a type. And I looked the idea online, and the thing about it is I found this report on it, this article, but I was never really able to find much more. And I was always questioning, well, why isn't this furthered, right? Why can't we actually do this? So that's, I'm not necessarily sure if that's benefiting the community, but that's something I was personally, looking into.
No, I think that's a very intriguing idea. I think
Yeah.
that would be really helpful. I know Andrew Squareheart, one of my moderators, and he's an expert in socionics. He's doing a model as well, but it's not like AI. He's doing a model for socionics. He has like 3D models of the cognitive functions.
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
how, if you look on his channel, if you just like type in Square Heart Socionics, I have him as one of my listed people on my channel, but it's interesting. And he's actually trying to develop like a foolproof test that will
Wow.
accurately type you as your personality type. And he's like putting in all of these factors like coding and like he's coding it in all these different factors and
Wow.
stuff. And one of the things that we're going to do in 2019, especially now that I moved into like our new house, or well, not Andrew's, he doesn't live here, but
Yeah.
now that we like my mom and I moved into our new house and like we're getting situated, I'm gonna start like really talking with him, and maybe you would even want to contribute to this.
Sure.
But
yeah,
like basically we're trying to come up with some very educational videos, and maybe I haven't again looked into Dave's superpowers too many times, but I think comparable to that in a way, but it would be more socionics related content. But because socionics is so hard to digest, it's so complex, even more so than what I know about Dave's superpowers methods. I know he pulls a lot from socionics. From what I've seen, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if we're going to be able to accomplish this in a year, but we're really going to try to shoot for coming up with some of those things. So maybe that would be something you would be interested in.
Yeah, that's a great goal. Yeah, I wouldn't be against participating. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I probably should.
Yeah.
I just sorry that guys that we have to have like a shorter stream today. But I told Daniel beforehand. My sister's in town, and my mom was actually calling me a few times during this.
Of course, yeah.
So, but yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I was gonna. I think you have been a phenomenal guest.
Okay, thank you.
And I hope that we're able to do stuff in the future. Do you have any things that you want to say before to the people?
So for the educational content with C.S. Joseph, I don't entirely agree with all that he says, but he has some very valuable stuff as well, especially when you go into the 4 sides of the mind, right? And 4 sides of the mind is basically you have your ego, your super ego. You get the point. Your subconscious. It kind of actually relates to socionics a bit because they actually talk about that too, right? And he also has this series on social engineering, which is also kind of cool. So you could look into that as well.
No, really what I need to do, and I think really anybody out there. I watch a lot of MBTI channels. Maybe I kind of have not watched C.S. Joseph and Dave Superpowers just because they have so much their content is very vast, especially Dave Superpowers. So I do need to look into that. I think it's best to look at everything, like everything you can. There's certain things like, for example, forums and stuff like that. I don't think they're valuable. Maybe in some ways, but yeah, no, I definitely should. So.
All right.
Well, anything to say to anybody out there?
No, that's it. I'm good.
Well, I hope you have. So are you starting back with school in January?
Yeah, the 14th. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
And I think just from my first impression of you, like this first meeting, I think you have a very bright future ahead of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.